Hello, boxing fans around the world. Thank you once again for joining us on another noontime episode here in Canada, at least, of Talkin Fight. And on this particular episode, we've got Christian from the Friday Night Panel joining us, and he's going to be speaking about boxing at the Olympics, which will be taking place this July in Tokyo. What do you got for us, Christian?
Well, we've got a bit of ground to cover today. We've got a few things going on, so I'll jump right in here. Brazil's government is set to start delivering COVID-19 vaccines to its athletes, coaches, referees, as well as accredited media headed for the Olympics and the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. So, Health Minister Marcelo Quiroga told a news conference on Tuesday that Brazil will get 4,050 doses of the Pfizer shot and around another 8,000 from Chinese pharmaceutical company Sinovac. Later at a congressional hearing, Quiroga said that those going to Japan would get the Pfizer shot, while the Sinovac shots would be sent to the country's national immunization program as part of the current agreement. Brazilian law states that private entities can only get COVID-19 jabs if an additional donation is made to the public healthcare system as well. So Quiroga told lawmakers, because of a strategic issue, we will use Pfizer to vaccinate our athletes because it is a shot that has already been approved in all countries, and it won't bring any hurdles to our athletes. Also, that vaccine has a short period between the first and second doses, which should immunize athletes quickly. Quiroga estimates that 1,814 people will be vaccinated to go to Japan, with any leftover doses being given to the public health system. Athlete vaccination program will begin on Wednesday and is set to be conducted in Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, as well as Fortaleza. It follows similar measures being undertaken currently in countries including the US, Britain, as well as Australia. Brazil has attributed more than 420,000 deaths to COVID-19, a toll only second to the United States. A more contagious variant of the disease has pushed the country's healthcare system to near collapse back in March and April. But the number of hospitalizations, it should be noted, is actually down this month in May. Brazil's vaccination rollout, though, has been slow and thus far has only been targeting people aged 60 and over. Famously, President Jair Bolsonaro has refused to take any vaccinations and is famously under investigation now with a Senate inquiry for his administration's handling of the pandemic. So it sounds like, they're taking steps forward, and this is good because, as you heard, they're second only to the U.S., and the U.S. is not having a great time at the moment. They're obviously on the upswing, and they're doing much better than we saw in especially March and April, but things not looking great. Very similar to what we're seeing in India. Very, very touchy situation in Brazil. So the fact that we're going to be able to see the athletes and anyone headed over, including media personnel, getting a shot beforehand is probably a good thing at the end of the day. And hopefully those added jabs that they're getting in from Sinovac are going to help to speed up their rollout, at least for some high risk neighborhoods or some high risk groups. But moving on, because like I said, we do have a bit of ground to cover today. Let's check in with our friends down in Africa here. Female members of Ghana's national boxing team, the Black Bombers, have appealed to media and sports authorities to grant them much needed support as well as recognition. Sarah Botchway of Wisdom Boxing Gym and Farouza Osman of Fit Square Gym made the passionate plea to the president of Ghana's Olympic Committee, or GOC, Mr. Ben Nuno Mensah, on Friday when he visited the training camp at visited the Black Bombers training camp, who are currently preparing for the Tokyo Olympics. So Sarah Botchway, who has been boxing with the national team for some years, said it's sad for them to be continuously training and not competing. Saying, also, when we train hard and are prepared for the games, we're dropped on the grounds of lack of finances. Farouza Osman expressed that all sportsmen and women who have been selected to compete for the nation should be treated and rewarded equally, which obviously they're not getting at this point in time. The Ghanaian Olympic Committee president said that his federation's female weightlifters have also suffered similar ordeals. However, he hopes that things would change as the nation prepares to host the African Games in 2023, where female boxers, he says, are going to be relied on to win medals. And that's also not forgetting the run-up to the Commonwealth Games in 2022 in Birmingham, as well as the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. So it sounds like they're looking to make these steps to move forward and give more recognition to female boxers as well as just female athletes in Ghana. But it looks also at the same time like these steps are rolling out slowly, and at least definitely too slowly to help them for this particular Olympics, as they didn't receive the financial support running up to this, which didn't allow them to participate in the relevant tournaments. So hopefully we do see some changes come in there, and hopefully sooner rather than later. Birmingham being obviously the first major international that we'll get a chance to see that in, but we'll keep you guys updated as we roll along with that one. It also should be noted that as far as their steps to better recognize female athletes in Ghana, recently the Greater Accra Amateur Boxing Association organized an all-female boxing event simply dubbed Girls Box, which was very successful and very well attended at the time. Moving on, though, this is a bit of a story that we've been following on this on our segment here for a little while now. Pardon me. Former tennis superstar Billie Jean King has now joined the chorus of voices backing Kitchener boxer Mandy Bujold's fight to compete at the Olympics this summer. So as you guys are obviously already know, Bujold was denied a bid at the Tokyo Games after the pandemic canceled qualifying events, and ranking points from 2018, a year which Bujold was on maternity leave, were used to determine the eligibility instead. In 2020, qualifying events were canceled around the world. Pregnancy is not an injury and should not be treated as one. This is Billie Jean King, who herself is a 39-time Grand Slam champion, wrote in a tweet. Bujold should be allowed to compete. Women athletes will continue to have babies, and the International Olympic Committee needs a rule in place for this now. Now, King, who is long since retired from tennis, is regarded by many as one of the sport's greatest players of all time, and has long been an advocate for women in sport. The tennis great's backing does come at a time as the GoFundMe page set up to help Bujold cover her legal costs for this fight against the IOC's ruling has brought in to date just a little over $9,500 as of Tuesday afternoon. Now, Boxing Canada has also voiced their support for Bujold's challenge of the qualification process. And, as one of Canada's top boxers and a two-time Pan American Games champion, Bujold has vowed to take her case to the Court of Arbitration for Sport after the IOC denied her appeal for the qualification process. Now, what she's arguing is that women, basically, in a nutshell, is that women who decide to have a baby should be able to keep their rankings from before pregnancy. In response, a spokesperson for the IOC has said that there is a consistent process to the Olympics qualification system. Now, a statement from the IOC reads, "The determination of a boxing qualification system is based on transparent and non-discriminatory qualification principles and includes a thorough assessment and consultation with teams, boxing task force athlete ambassadors, boxing task force expert group representatives, as well as medical advisors." So we'll continue to update you guys on this one. The IOC at this point obviously is still remaining intransigent, and at this point the case has been taken to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, although we haven't heard anything back. We're going to be looking at obviously a compressed timeline on this, as any decision that's coming forward on this obviously needs to be made very soon if she expects to compete at this Olympiad. So I remain doubtful, unfortunately, that this is going to move forward in her favor, but hopefully it's at least opening up the conversation to a broader spectrum where we're going to start seeing this conversation visited before Paris 2024, and we might even see new regulations put in at an AIBA level or other major tournaments such as the Commonwealth Games as a result of this. But unfortunately, I just don't see the IOC budging on this one. Moving along, though, into something a little happier, some happier news here, and I know one that our friends in Great Britain have been looking forward to for a while now, because it's a moment that many people in British amateur boxing have spent many months waiting for. The dates for the championships for 2021 are in. After a punishing lockdown, amateur boxing training indoors has restarted at this point with limited pad work coming back. So the next step is to bring back competition. Now it's provided the UK government's current roadmap of the pandemic doesn't change. So as we all know that, anything could change any day now, but under current roadmap conditions, that's the next thing that's going to happen is competitions. So a national championship schedule for England has been drawn up following consultation with England's boxing regional representatives, a selection of coaches and officials, as well as lengthy discussions between England Boxing Championship subcommittees and board. So the schedule is as follows. So get your pens ready if you're in the UK and want to know when these things are happening. If not, you're going to have to look them up later. So the England National Schools Championship for 2021, and that's going to be the semifinals and finals, are going to be running between September 25th and 26th. England Boxing National Youth Championships, and as well as Youth Development Championships for 2021. That's quarterfinals, semis, and finals will be running between October 15th and 17th. England's Boxing National Junior Championships and Junior Development Championships for 2021, semifinals and finals running November 20th and 21st. England's Boxing National Amateur Championships, pre-quarterfinals, November 27th or 28th. That one is yet to be confirmed for the actual dates, so we'll get back to you once we have those nailed down. England's National Boxing Amateur Championships, as well as the Senior Development Championships for 2021. And that's the quarter and semifinals are going to be from the 4th and 5th of December, with England's Boxing National Amateur Championships and Senior Development Championships for final days are going to be running through the 11th and 12th. Competitions and events manager Lindsay Lockey has said of this whole new situation here, "We are delighted to be able to rearrange each of the national championships, which will hopefully end the year on a high after a difficult previous 18 months or so." Adding that the frustrating lack of activity that we've all had to deal with, to be talking about dates for competitions to be coming up and running again is really exciting. And I'm sure that we will be treated to some fantastic boxing, provided that the government gives us the green light for everything to go ahead. Fingers crossed once again here. She says that because we are having to squeeze what would normally be held over the course of the best part of a year into just 4 months, so that boxers rightly will have the necessary time to prepare correctly after the enforced extended break from competition, we have had to make certain sacrifices, because of circumstances, in order to make this happen. Due to time scales, we have merged the development competitions with the respective national championships, and that's for senior, youth, and junior, and regrettably will not be able to host the England Boxing Women's Winter Box Cup this year. But in an exceptional year because of COVID, this was the most viable solution in the time slot available to get all 5 national championships in and give everyone at all levels a chance to box for a national title. We've done everything that we can to get competitions on again, and it feels better to have some of what is possible in a quote-unquote normal year rather than nothing at all. We wish everyone the best of luck in their training for competitions, and coronavirus permitting, we look forward to seeing lots of familiar boxers and coaches back where they belong, which is in the ring competing come the autumn. So venues, though, for these particular competitions will be announced in due course. They haven't said anything as of yet. The intention is to return, though, to a traditional schedule in 2022, meaning that all age groups are going to see 2 national championships in the same season over the course of 21-22. Okay, so Boxing Scotland has also announced an eventual return to competition. Details on this are all going to be dependent on the Scottish government's roadmap and current COVID-19 directions staying on track. So much like in England, fingers crossed, but that could change at any point in time. Boxing Scotland have also confirmed dates for their 21-22 championships. Now, these are the Boxing Scotland National School and Junior Championship preliminary rounds are going to be held in September on the 18th and 19th, with the semifinals and finals running from the 25th to the 26th. Boxing Scotland's National Intermediate Championships are going to be on the October 16th and 17th. Boxing Scotland's National Novice Championships are not going to be held until February 5th and 6th of 2022, moving into next year. Semifinals and finals will be on the 12th and 13th of February 2022. And Boxing Scotland's National Youth Championships will be running at the end of March 2022. Running from the 19th through the 27th. And that's to include youth finals, and with elite finals starting up on April the 9th, 2022. So we are going to be, and that once we run through the end of April 2022, we're going to be just around the corner from Birmingham 2022, which will be running that summer. So we got basically a full calendar for our friends over in the UK, going from starting in June in Paris, running right through the Olympic Games, and then back into some bigger tournaments in their own backyard, getting those national titles nailed down in time for the Commonwealth Games. And then we're just going to keep steamrolling on through there, Graham. Lots going on.
That was a heck of an update. And to our viewership out there, sorry for the few-minute delay. We were just recapping what we were going to talk about and focus on first. And Ghana had to start us off. Christian and I have spent some time in Ghana. We understand how tough it is for them to get things pushed through on a government level. I'm pretty sure the women who are boxing, who are fighting for that right to box and have support from the government, have an uphill battle, and that's even if they have qualified. And moving on to Mandy Bujold's story is just, that's a fiasco, if you ask me, for the IOC. Really,
it's going to open. What it's going to do, we're not going to see any changes, but it's starting the conversation. Hopefully, that other people are paying attention. Pan Am, Commonwealth, Asian, AIBA, the ASBC. I hope they're all paying attention to what's going on right now, and I hope that they're not going to take the IOC being intransigent about this as a precedent, and giving them permission to remain intransigent on something like this in some of these larger tournaments coming up. I hope that this opens up the conversation minimally. Ideally, obviously, we would love to see Mandy in the ring and bringing home a medal for Canada. But minimally, if nothing else, I hope that this opens up the conversation, and I hope that other large international organizations are paying attention and are starting to have that conversation internally before it gets to the point where they are being asked in the media, what do you intend to do about this? So hopefully by the time those conversations land on their doorstep, for the organizers of the Commonwealth Games, for example, they're going to have an answer in place already because this conversation has started.
Yeah, I mean, it is somewhat phenomenal to think that these conversations are only getting started and have to be started due to a ruckus, quite frankly, that someone hasn't thought about this 20 or 30 years ago. Maybe.
Well, to be fair, is this something that you were considering about, back when when women's boxing was introduced at London? Didn't cross my mind. And I think it's one of those things, especially in a predominantly male-dominated sport, both from an athlete's side, but as well as a coaching, referee, training, judging. It is a male-dominated sport at this point in the game, and it's something that we would have just thought to ourselves, something that I would have thought to myself, oh, yeah, I'm sure somebody's thought of that. I'm sure somebody's thinking about that, because it's not going to be naturally on my radar necessarily. As a guy watching a male-dominated sport, you're not thinking about issues such as pregnancy. You're not thinking of issues such as menstruation when it comes to training and things like that. Female fighters require different nutritional vitamin requirements and things like that at different points of their training than male fighters are going to require as well. And that's just in their regular training, as well as if you're starting in a postpartum situation, getting back into the ring. So there's health concerns and stuff like that. And this is stuff that I'm just reading about now. And I know that you've been following boxing a long time as well, but these are things that haven't been part of the discussion. So it's not something that we've been talking about when we sit around, at the pub talking about boxing. That's not a conversation that we're having, because it's something you just kind of assume that other people are talking about. So the conversation has to start somewhere. And even if it is starting late, I'm glad that we're having it now as a community.
You're right. I mean, it's not something you and I would commonly think about. But you'd think that by the time they made boxing an Olympic sport for women, introduced it in 2012, someone would have put in there, with respect to the qualifiers, if there is a female boxer who has qualified, who gets pregnant, takes that time off, that period of her disengagement from the sport does not disqualify her. In other words, she should come. It's like in professional sports. If you get injured, you don't necessarily get released from the team because you're injured. No, when you come back from your injury, you're put right back onto the team.
Well,
And
that's
I
a bit of
don't.
a dangerous comparison to Polk, and that was one of the things they were saying very specifically in this one was that pregnancy is not an injury and shouldn't
Yes,
be
yes,
treated
yes,
as and should not
yes.
be treated as such.
Okay. No, but
Just it's
I was simply saying though that you would have thought someone these so-called, remember I keep talking about these so-called professionals who get paid a lot of money. Okay,
mhm.
these are the guys who run these organizations. They get paid a lot of money, and all I'm saying is you'd think way back then, allowing women to enter into the ring, great decision. They should have been there a lot earlier. But having gotten to that point, they should have also thought, what do we do if one of these female boxers gets pregnant?
Well, you said it yourself, Graham. The guys who are running this. That's what it comes down to. Because okay, so yes, we've opened up. We're taking steps in the right direction, and we're bringing, we've brought women's boxing up onto the Olympic level. But as a male-dominated sport, when those decisions were first being taken to open up Olympic boxing, as well as AIBA and other organizations have been opening up over the years since the 90s now to women boxers, it's been still been men in charge. So in a lot of these cases, women just were not being consulted early at the early stages of this. And this is why you see things like AIBA right now. One of their commitments was to bring a lot more women onto their consulting committees. And the Mary Kom, for example, one of India's greatest boxers, kind of thing, was put on one of the committees recently. Is heading up one of their committees, and they've made a commitment to start having better diversity on their committees. And that's going to make this process go a lot faster, because when we start dealing with things like women's issues, we don't have a bunch of guys sitting around a room talking about it. You can actually consult women about it. And I think at the early stages of this sort of thing, it wasn't so much the IOC or anyone else saying, "Wow, guys, we really got to get women into boxing. We really have to expand in women's sports." This was the IOC under pressure to expand women in sports, to expand these roles and to allow women. It wasn't because they were being super progressive. It was because they were bowing to public pressure, which about time. But because when you're bowing to pressure as opposed to trying to take a step forward on your own, you're doing what you have to do, not necessarily what you can do, if that makes sense. And I just think a lot of the consultations were just, these were boardrooms with a bunch of guys going like, okay, so they're in, we've got the weight classes, rubber stamped, and they've moved on. And then now we're trying to play catch up to all the conversations that they should have been having early on.
Right. Fair enough. All said. Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Christian. Thanks very much for all the comments coming through from our viewership. It does open up a can of worms, I agree. But we are talking about it, and I imagine the powers that be are talking about it, and they now include women who are smart, and they'll deal with it and make sure that the right decisions are made. Way smarter.
Better trained than us.
And getting paid way more than us. All right, Christian, we'll see you tomorrow, okay?
We'll talk then.